all-share index rebounded from moderate losses yesterday, rising 0.61% to 37,014.79 points. Well, I will be speaking with Kayode Tinoye, Strategy and Business Officer at Diamond Bank. Well, Kayode, we started by asking earlier now, how did the market perform today?
Well, the market was up slightly today by about 60 basis points after the drop that we saw yesterday. It's a slight rebound in market activities, and there was a lot of optimism in the market today.
All right then. Now, how viable is the agricultural sector? Let's focus on that sector for a while. You know, in terms of investment potential and attractiveness to foreign investors. I mean, are the agricultural companies positioning themselves very well?
Well, I think the sector is currently viable, but the level of activities that we have seen in the sector is not very encouraging to investors. There are very few stocks that are quoted on the stock exchange from the agricultural sector. But going by the recent policy initiatives of the government, we see a lot of opportunities in the sector, particularly with the reform initiatives of the federal government in that sector, in terms of promoting lending for the sector going forward.
When you say not performing very well, for investors to come in, what are the figures you're talking about here?
Well, the sector is viable. There is a lot of potential when you look at the size of the Nigerian economy vis-a-vis population and the increasing demand for food. You recall that currently Nigeria is a net importer of food, and a lot of analysts have questioned why we should be net importers of food currently. And that shows us that the market is large domestically, and there is a lot of potential for investors to come into the sector.
Now, what would you consider to be the attitude of banks towards financing agriculture?
Well, currently, banks take a very risk-averse position to funding agricultural projects generally. That is the reason for that is not far-fetched because the agricultural sector is a very risky sector. Even when you look at the counterpart funding that have been provided by the CBN in recent times, you will find out that much of the financing has gone into production and processing, especially processing of agricultural products, where banks can easily predict the cash flows from any project they are providing financing to. So the risk appetite is low, but I think what the government is doing is to try to de-risk the sector and make banks more willing to lend to the sector. Recall that the government has launched the incentive risk-based lending for agriculture, and that is expected to improve funding to that sector and improve lending going forward.
All right. Now, with regards to returns on investment, now what is the valuation of the agricultural stocks? I mean, let's such as Okomu Oil, Presco, and livestock. How has the performance been year to date?
Well, earnings have been very volatile for most of these companies, especially Okomu Oil. Investors' expectations have not been fully met, even though the potential still remains for the stock to perform going forward. In terms of valuation, when you look at the prospect for the sector generally, talking about the macroeconomic opportunities that exist for firms in that sector, especially Okomu Oil, whose products seem to be very more of a necessity for households, you begin to see that these stocks have a lot of potential, and you will see them perform well going forward.
Well, we're seeing agricultural stocks are not fully represented on the bourse, though finance has been cited as a major obstacle to the growth of, that sector. Now, what are the possible areas of, partnership by the government, you think they can come up, besides the policies you mentioned earlier, to spur their inclusion?
Well, I think a lot of the investment that are coming into the sector have been from public funding. There is very minimal private sector involvement, and that is what the government is trying to to correct, and you'll find out that banks really will want to be a lot more comfortable lending to private sector initiatives in the sector, and that is what I think that the government needs to focus more on. We see recently that the president claims that about $8 billion investment or commitment have been received based on the various policies that the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development have put in place. I think banks have a lot to gain funding the sector, but there should be a lot more clarity as to how the risk will be dimensioned by the bank and how they can share the risk among the various stakeholders.